The blood hit the white hospital floor like scattered rubies. Min Seo-jin pressed her palm against the bathroom wall, her chemotherapy port torn loose and bleeding through her thin cotton gown. The fluorescent lights above buzzed mercilessly as she slumped to the cold tile, her legs finally giving out after 3 days of pretending she was strong enough to walk to the bathroom alone. Yama mianhae, mianhae. The Korean words escaped her lips in a whisper, an apology to her mother 3,000 miles away, who believed her daughter was getting better, not worse. The bathroom door burst open. Oh, hell no. Marcus Williams dropped to his knees beside her, his large hands hovering over her trembling form. His dark eyes assessed the damage with clinical precision: torn IV port, blood loss, probable dehydration. But his voice carried something else entirely. Gentleness. Don't call anyone, Seo-jin managed, her English fractured by pain. Please. Marcus should have hit the emergency button, should have called Dr. Chen, should have followed every protocol in his 6 years as an oncology nurse. Instead, he shrugged off his navy blue scrub jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. What's your favorite color? The question was so unexpected, so absurdly normal in a moment of crisis, that Seo-jin's tears stopped. She blinked up at him, confused. What? Your favorite color, Marcus repeated, his voice steady as he gently pressed gauze against her bleeding port. Tell me. Lilac. The word came automatically, a childhood memory of spring in Seoul. Mine too, he lied softly, his hands working to stop the bleeding. It's the color of strength. Seo-jin had heard many things in the sterile halls of St. Mary's Medical Center. Prognoses, percentages, protocols. But no one had ever told her that her favorite color, soft, delicate lilac, was the color of strength. For the first time in 8 months of treatment, she felt something other than the crushing weight of being a burden. She felt curious about the man who could see strength where everyone else saw only fragility. Who are you? She whispered. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Someone who's going to prove you're stronger than you think. But as he helped her to her feet, neither of them noticed Dr. Chen watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable. What happens when the one person who sees your strength is about to become the one thing you can't afford to lose? If you're already invested in Seo-jin's journey, subscribe now, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about healing. The lilac bouquet appeared on Seo-jin's bedside table, like a small rebellion against the sterile white of room 314. She stared at the purple blooms, still groggy from the pain medication Dr. Chen had insisted on after yesterday's bathroom incident. The flowers weren't from the hospital gift shop, too expensive, too carefully arranged. Someone had gone to a real florist. Those weren't authorized. Nurse Patricia's voice cut through Seo-jin's haze. The older woman stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, disapproval radiating from every line of her starched uniform. Hospital policy clearly states, I brought them. Marcus appeared behind Patricia, his broad shoulders filling the doorframe. Is that a problem? Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. You know the rules about personal gifts to patients, Williams, especially international patients with complex situations. Seo-jin's cheeks burned. Complex situations. Code for the Korean girl, whose insurance barely covered half her treatment, whose parents sent desperate wire transfers from Seoul, whose medical file was stamped with more red flags than approvals. The flowers stay, Marcus said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Unless the patient objects. Both nurses looked at Seo-jin. She should object, should follow the rules, keep her head down, not make waves. That's what good patients did. What good Korean daughters did. Instead, she reached out and touched one delicate petal. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." Patricia muttered something about protocol violations and stalked out. Marcus lingered, his dark eyes studying Seo-jin's face with an intensity that made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with her medication. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck." She attempted a smile. "But the flowers help." "Lilac blooms in the hardest soil," Marcus said, adjusting her IV line with practiced efficiency. "My grandmother used to say that." "Your grandmother was wise." "She was stubborn as hell and twice as strong." He met her eyes. "Reminds me of someone I know." Before Seo-jin could ask what he meant, her phone buzzed with a video call from Seoul. Her parents' faces appeared on the screen, her mother's worried expression immediately zeroing in on the flowers behind Seo-jin. "Seo-jina, what are those flowers? Who sent them?" her mother asked in rapid Korean. Seo-jin glanced at Marcus, who was pretending to busy himself with her chart. "Just a friend, Iyama." Her father's sharp eyes narrowed. "What kind of friend?" But Marcus had already slipped out of the room, leaving behind only the scent of lilac and the dangerous feeling that someone finally saw her as more than just a patient to be pitied. The question hung in the air like a challenge. What happens when kindness becomes something more? "Repeat after me." "Thank you." Marcus sat in the chair beside Seo-jin's bed, a Korean language app open on his phone. It was his third attempt at pronunciation, and he was failing spectacularly. "Gamsaham? Gamsahamnida?" Seo-jin covered her mouth to hide her giggle. "Close, but you're saying it like you're angry at someone." "I am angry at this language." Marcus frowned at his phone. "How do you make all those sounds flow together like that?" "Practice, lots of practice." Seo-jin's eyes sparkled with the first real humor she'd shown since arriving at St. Mary's. "Try again, but softer, like you're talking to a baby." "Gamsahamnida," Marcus said, his voice gentler. "Better. Now try, how are you?" "Why do I need to know that? I'm a nurse. I can tell how you are by looking at you." Seo-jin's smile faded slightly. "Because maybe someday you'll want to ask someone how they are in their own language. Because it matters." Something in her tone made Marcus set down his phone and really look at her. "It matters to you. My whole life, people have asked me to translate myself, to make myself smaller, easier to understand." She fingered the edge of her hospital blanket. "When someone tries to speak Korean to me, even badly, it feels like they're trying to understand the part of me that gets lost in translation." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. "What gets lost?" "The way I joke with my friends back home. The way I argue with my father, which is nothing like how I argue in English. The way I fall in love, I guess. Everything sounds different in Korean." "How do you fall in love differently?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Seo-jin's monitor beeped steadily, the only sound in the sudden silence. "In Korean, there are different words for different kinds of love," she said finally. "The love for family, for friends, for someone special. They're all different. In English, everything is just love. And which kind of love sounds best in Korean?" Seo-jin met his eyes. "The kind that's worth learning a new language for." Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming text, breaking the moment. His expression shifted as he read the message, a muscle in his jaw tightening. "I have to go," he said abruptly, standing. "My supervisor wants to see me." After he left, Seo-jin stared at the lilac flowers on her nightstand. She pulled out her sketchbook and began drawing Marcus's hands. Strong, gentle, fumbling with Korean pronunciation. But as she drew, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was sketching something that might already be slipping away. Would learning to love in 2 languages be worth the risk of losing everything in both? "You're off the Kim case." Supervisor Janet Rodriguez didn't look up from her computer screen as she delivered the blow. Marcus stood in her office doorway, still holding the Korean language app he'd forgotten to close. "What? Why?" "You know why." Janet finally met his eyes, her expression stern but not unkind. Personal gifts, extended conversations, spending time in her room outside of your assigned duties. Need I continue? Marcus's hands clenched at his sides. She's alone here. No family, barely speaks the language. She speaks English fine, Williams. And she's not your responsibility beyond basic medical care. Since when is compassion against hospital policy? Since it crosses professional boundaries. Janet leaned back in her chair. Look, I get it. She's young, she's sick, she's far from home. But you're a nurse, not a social worker, and definitely not a boyfriend. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's not, isn't it? Janet pulled up something on her computer. Pharmacy logged an order for lilac flowers charged to petty cash. Guess who authorized it? Marcus said nothing. And 3 different patients have mentioned that the tall nurse seems especially attentive to the Korean girl. People notice Marcus, including the families paying premium rates for private care. So this is about money. This is about you keeping your job. Janet's voice softened slightly. You're a good nurse, Marcus, one of my best. But you've got a blind spot when it comes to dying patients, especially young ones. The reference to his sister hung unspoken between them. Marcus had never told Janet about Keisha, but supervisors had ways of knowing things. She's not dying, Marcus said quietly. Isn't she? Dr. Chen's latest report shows minimal response to treatment. The family is asking about hospice options. The words hit Marcus like ice water. Hospice. He'd helped transition dozens of patients to end-of-life care, but hearing it about Seo-jin felt impossible. Nurse Johnson will take over her care starting tonight, Janet continued. You're being reassigned to pediatric overflow. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. What if she asks for me? She won't be your problem anymore. Walking back through the oncology ward felt like moving through quicksand. Every step toward room 314 was heavier than the last. Through the open door, he could see Seo-jin propped up in bed, sketching in that notebook she carried everywhere. The lilac flowers, his flowers, sat in their vase like accusations. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway, her face brightening. Did you practice your Korean? Seo-jin. He couldn't figure out how to start. Her smile faded. You're not coming back, are you? The way she said it, resigned, like she'd been expecting this moment, broke something in his chest. It's not my choice. It never is. She closed her sketchbook carefully. Thank you for the flowers. They were beautiful while they lasted. Marcus wanted to tell her this wasn't over. Wanted to promise he'd find a way to see her. Instead, he did what he'd learned to do with every patient he'd lost. He stepped back into professional distance. Take care of yourself, Seo-jin. As he walked away, he heard her whisper something in Korean. He didn't need translation to understand the weight of tears in her voice. But some boundaries are meant to be broken, especially when breaking them might be the only way to save a life. 3 days without Marcus felt like 3 years. Nurse Johnson was competent, professional, and absolutely nothing like the man who had asked about favorite colors while stopping her from bleeding out on a bathroom floor. She administered medications with efficient precision, checked vitals with clinical detachment, and never once asked Seo-jin how she was feeling beyond the standard pain scale assessment. 1 to 10? Johnson asked for the third time that morning, pen poised over her chart. 7, Seo-jin lied. The truth was closer to 9, but what was the point? Higher numbers meant more morphine, and morphine meant sleeping through the few precious hours when she didn't feel like she was drowning. I'll increase your dosage. No. The word came out sharper than Seo-jin intended. I'm fine. The pain is manageable. Johnson's eyebrows rose. Your chart indicates significant discomfort during the last cycle. Dr. Chen specifically ordered, I said I'm fine. After Johnson left, Seo-jin stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the tiny holes in each square. Anything to avoid looking at the empty chair where Marcus used to sit, fumbling through Korean pronunciation like it was the most important skill in the world. Her phone buzzed. A video call from Seoul. Seo-jin-ah. Her mother's face filled the screen, but something was different. Instead of the worried frown Seo-jin had grown accustomed to, her mother looked excited. We have news. Her father appeared beside her mother, his usually stern expression softer than she'd seen it in months. Your test results came back. The tumor markers are down 30%. Seo-jin blinked. What? Dr. Chen called us directly. The chemotherapy is working better than expected. Her mother was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. Our prayers are being answered. 30%. Seo-jin had learned enough medical terminology to know that was significant. That was the difference between hospice and hope. The doctor says if this continues, you might be able to come home for Chuseok, her father added, his voice thick with emotion. Home for Chuseok. The autumn festival, her favorite holiday. The thought of sitting around her family's table, eating her mother's songpyeon, felt like a fantasy she'd stopped allowing herself to imagine. That's wonderful news, Appa. But even as she smiled for her parents, even as she felt the first flutter of genuine hope in months, there was a hollow ache in her chest. The person she most wanted to share this news with was 3 floors away in pediatrics, probably teaching some kid the Korean word for brave. After the call ended, Seo-jin opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. Without really thinking about it, she began drawing Marcus's hands again, the way they'd moved so gently over her IV port, the careful precision with which he'd arranged the lilac flowers. But this time, she drew them reaching toward her, and she drew her own hands reaching back. A soft knock interrupted her drawing. She looked up, expecting to see Johnson with more medications. Instead, Dr. Helen Chen stood in the doorway, her usually pristine lab coat slightly wrinkled, her dark hair escaping from its neat bun. May I come in? Seo-jin nodded, quickly closing her sketchbook. Dr. Chen pulled up the chair, Marcus's chair, and sat down heavily. For a moment, she just studied Seo-jin's face with the same intensity she usually reserved for CT scans. Your parents told you about the test results. Yes, thank you. I know you called them personally. I did. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Seo-jin, can I ask you something? Off the record? Of course. 3 weeks ago, you were barely responding to treatment. Your body was rejecting the chemotherapy, your white cell count was dangerously low, and frankly, she paused. I was preparing to have a very different conversation with your parents. Seo-jin's heart skipped. But something changed. Something changed. Dr. Chen confirmed. Your body started fighting, really fighting. And I can't help but notice that the change coincided with a certain nurse's involvement in your care. Heat rushed to Seo-jin's cheeks. I don't understand. I think you do. Dr. Chen leaned forward. I've been practicing medicine for 20 years, Seo-jin. I've seen patients rally for all kinds of reasons, new treatments, family visits, religious experiences, but I've also seen them rally for love. The word hung between them like a confession. Dr. Chen, I'm not asking you to admit anything. I'm telling you something. The older woman's voice was gentle but firm. Hope is medicine. Connection is medicine. And whatever was happening between you and Nurse Williams, it was helping you heal. Seo-jin felt tears prick her eyes. It doesn't matter now. He's not allowed to see me anymore. Says who? Hospital policy. Professional boundaries. Dr. Chen smiled. The first real smile Seo-jin had ever seen from her. Seo-jin, I'm the attending physician on your case. If I determine that a particular nurse's care is medically beneficial to your recovery, then that nurse stays on your case. Policy be damned. Seo-jin's heart hammered against her ribs. You would do that? I would do that. Dr. Chen stood up. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Are you in love with him? The question was so direct, so completely unlike the careful medical language Seo-jin had grown used to, that she nearly laughed. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. Yes, I think I am. And does he feel the same way? Seo-jin thought about Marcus's gentle hands, his terrible Korean pronunciation, the way he'd called lilac the color of strength. I think so, but it's complicated. Love usually is. Dr. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. That 30% improvement? It's not just the chemotherapy working better. It's you fighting harder. Don't let anyone tell you that your feelings aren't real medicine. After she left, Seo-jin stared at her closed sketchbook for a long time. Then she opened it to the drawing of reaching hands and very carefully erased the space between them. But would breaking the rules be worth the risk, especially when someone's life hung in the balance? At 3:17 a.m., Seo-jin's phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Seoul. She answered it quickly, knowing that her parents wouldn't call at this hour unless something was wrong. Her father's face appeared on the screen, but he looked different. Older. More tired than she'd ever seen him. Appa, what's wrong? Where's Yama? She's sleeping. Young-ho's voice was hoarse. Seo-jin, we need to talk. Seo-jin sat up in bed, her heart racing. Are you sick? Is Yoma... We're fine, but there's something I need to tell you. Her father ran a hand through his graying hair. Something I should have told you months ago. The hospital room felt suddenly cold. Seo-jin pulled her blanket up to her chin. What is it? The treatment center you're at, St. Mary's. It's not covered by our insurance. What do you mean? You said... I lied. The admission seemed to cost him everything. Your mother doesn't know. She thinks the insurance is covering 70%. The truth is... He took a shaky breath. The truth is I sold the company. Seo-jin's world tilted. Her father's electronics company had been his life's work, built from nothing over 30 years. It was supposed to be her inheritance, her future. Appa, no. I sold it to pay for your treatment. The experimental protocol Dr. E. Shen recommended, the private room, the round-the-clock care. It's costing us $8,000 a week. $8,000 a week. Seo-jin felt sick. You should have told me. I would have come home. You would have died. Jung-ho's voice was fierce. You think I built that company for money? I built it for you, so you could have choices, opportunities. And if the best opportunity I can give you is the chance to live, then that's what I'll do. Tears streamed down Seo-jin's face. Appa, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for being sick. Don't apologize for fighting. And don't you dare apologize for getting better. His expression softened. But there's more. More? The money will run out in 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if I sell the apartment too. Jung-ho looked directly into the camera. Seo-jin, I need you to get well fast. Not because I can't afford for you to be sick, but because I can't afford to lose you. After the call ended, Seo-jin lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. 6 weeks? Maybe 8? And then what? Back to Seoul to die in a public hospital bed while her parents lost everything they'd worked their entire lives to build? She thought about Dr. Chen's words earlier that day. Hope is medicine. Connection is medicine. But what good was medicine if you couldn't afford it? Her door creaked open. She expected to see Johnson making rounds, but the silhouette in the doorway was taller, broader. Marcus? He stepped into the room, closing the door quietly behind him. Hey, what are you doing here? You'll get in trouble. I'm already in trouble. He moved to the chair beside her bed, his chair. Dr. Chen talked to my supervisor. I'm back on your case as of tonight. Seo-jin's heart leaped. Really? Really? Something about medical necessity and patient care optimization. He smiled. Fancy way of saying you need me. I do need you. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Marcus went very still. Seo-jin. I know we can't. I know this is complicated. But I need you to know that these past few days without you, it felt like dying all over again. You're not dying, Marcus said fiercely. Your test results are temporary. Seo-jin sat up, meeting his eyes. My father just told me. The money runs out in 6 weeks. Maybe 8. She watched Marcus process this information, saw the moment when understanding hit him like a physical blow. That's why you were asking about pain medication. Why you didn't want the morphine. Every day I'm not getting better is another day my father loses everything he worked for. Another day closer to the end of treatment. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What if I told you there might be another way? What do you mean? Doctor. Chen mentioned something. A clinical trial, experimental immunotherapy combined with traditional chemo. It's risky, but if it works, you could be cured. Really cured. Not just in remission, but cancer-free. Seo-jin's heart hammered. What's the catch? It's experimental, unproven, and there are only 3 spots left in the trial. And the cost? Marcus smiled. Fully funded. Government grant. If you're accepted, everything is covered. Treatment, room, meals, everything. For the first time in months, Seo-jin felt something she'd almost forgotten. Real hope. How do I apply? You don't. I do. Marcus leaned forward. Dr. Chen can recommend you, but the application has to come from your primary care nurse. Someone who's seen your day-to-day progress, who can speak to your will to fight. You. Me. He reached out, then stopped himself just short of taking her hand. But Seo-jin, you need to understand what you're asking me to do. If I recommend you for this trial, I'm putting my professional reputation on the line. If it doesn't work, you'll blame yourself. I'll destroy myself. Seo-jin looked at this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she hadn't known she was praying. This man who saw strength in her favorite color, who tried to learn Korean for her, who was willing to risk everything just to give her a chance. "Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. Why? Why are you willing to do this for me?" Marcus was quiet for so long that Seo-jin thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I watched my sister die when I was too young to save her. And I swore I'd never watch someone fight alone again." "Your sister?" "Keisha. She was 19, leukemia." Marcus's eyes were dark with old pain. "She used to ask me to read to her when the chemo made her too sick to focus. And every night she'd ask me the same question. 'Do you think I'm brave?' And every night, I'd tell her yes. She was brave. She was terrified. But she fought anyway. Just like you." Finally, Marcus reached out and took her hand. "The difference is, this time I'm not a scared kid watching from the sidelines. This time I can actually help." Seo-jin squeezed his fingers. "What if the trial doesn't work? Then we'll have fought as hard as we could. Together." "Together?" Marcus brought her hand to his lips and pressed the softest kiss to her knuckles. "If you'll have me. But some promises are easier to make than keep, especially when the price of failure is losing everything that matters." James Morrison found Marcus in the hospital cafeteria at midnight, hunched over a laptop and a stack of medical journals that looked like they weighed more than a small child. "Jesus, man, you look like hell." Marcus glanced up, his eyes bloodshot from hours of research. "Feel like it too." James slid into the opposite chair, setting down 2 cups of coffee. "Let me guess. Korean patient?" "Her name is Seo-jin." "Right. Seo-jin." James took a sip of his coffee and made a face. "God, this stuff is terrible. Why aren't you at home? Normal people sleep at night." "Working on her application for the immunotherapy trial. Deadline's tomorrow." "Ah." James leaned back in his chair. "And how exactly did this become your problem?" Marcus looked up sharply. "She's my patient." "She's a patient. There's a difference." James's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, we've been friends for 6 years. I've seen you care about patients before. This isn't that." "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." James pulled one of the medical journals toward him, scanning the cover. "Immunotherapy protocols for advanced cervical cancer. Light bedtime reading?" Marcus said nothing. "You know what I think?" James continued. "I think you're falling for her. Hard. And it's scaring the shit out of you. It's not what? Not professional? Not appropriate? Not exactly what happened with Keisha?" The name hit Marcus like a slap. "Don't. Your sister died, Marcus. You were 17 years old and couldn't save her. That's not your fault. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to save every dying girl who comes through those doors." James leaned forward. "And this one's different because she's not actually dying, and she's definitely not 17. And maybe, just maybe, saving her might actually save you too." Marcus closed his laptop with more force than necessary. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you've been learning Korean. I know you spent $200 of your own money on flowers. I know you got yourself reassigned back to her case by convincing Dr. Chen that your emotional involvement was somehow medical necessity. How do you... Hospital gossip travels fast, especially when one of the good guys starts breaking rules." James's expression softened. "Marcus, I'm not judging you. Hell, I'm proud of you." "Proud of me for what? Violating professional ethics? Putting my career at risk? For finally letting yourself feel something for someone who might actually live long enough to love you back. The words hung between them like a bridge. Marcus wasn't sure he was ready to cross. She's 28, Marcus said quietly. Lives in Seoul. Has parents who think American nurses are probably just after her money. And even if this trial works, even if she gets better, what then? Long-distance relationship with someone I met while she was dying? You met her while she was fighting. There's a difference. Marcus rubbed his eyes. Her father sold his company to pay for her treatment. Everything he worked for his entire life, gone. Because I couldn't save her with regular chemotherapy. That's not on you, isn't it? I'm the one who convinced Dr. Chen to recommend her for experimental treatment. I'm the one who filled out this application. Marcus gestured at the laptop. If this trial doesn't work, if she gets worse instead of better, her family loses everything for nothing. And if it does work? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. If it works, she goes back to Seoul, lives her life. Maybe remembers the American nurse who held her hand during chemo. Or maybe she falls in love with the American nurse who saved her life. Love doesn't work that way, James. You can't build a relationship on gratitude. James smiled. Who said anything about gratitude? I'm talking about love. The real kind. The kind where someone sees you at your absolute worst and still thinks you're worth fighting for. She doesn't know me at my worst, doesn't she? James leaned forward. Marcus, you've spent the last 3 weeks showing this woman exactly who you are. The guy who breaks rules for people he cares about. The guy who learns foreign languages just to make someone smile. The guy who stays up all night researching experimental treatments because he can't bear the thought of losing someone else. That's exactly who you are. And if she's falling for that guy, then she's not falling for some fantasy. She's falling for the real you. James stood up. The question is, are you brave enough to let her? After James left, Marcus sat alone in the empty cafeteria, staring at the application on his laptop screen. 12 pages of medical data, treatment history, and personal recommendations. The culmination of 3 weeks that had changed everything he thought he knew about professional boundaries and appropriate care. At the top of the first page, in the box marked patient name, he'd typed, Min-seo Jin. In the box marked recommending nurse, he'd typed, Marcus Williams, RN. But in the section titled Personal Statement, Why This Patient Should Be Selected, the cursor blinked on an empty page. How do you put into words that someone has become the reason you believe in hope again? How do you explain that saving her has become indistinguishable from saving yourself? Marcus began to type. I am recommending Min-seo Jin for the experimental immunotherapy trial because she has shown extraordinary resilience in the face of advanced disease. But more than that, she has shown the capacity to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. In the 3 weeks I have served as her primary care nurse, I have watched her fight not just for her own life, but for the hope that love, in all its forms, can be medicine. If courage could cure cancer, Seo Jin would already be well. Since it cannot, I am asking you to give her the next best thing, a chance. He saved the document, closed the laptop, and headed back to room 314. But some applications are about more than medical trials. They're about risking everything for the chance to love someone who might not survive long enough to love you back. The immunotherapy trial acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday morning that felt like Christmas, and the apocalypse rolled into one. Dr. Chen delivered the news personally, her usually composed face breaking into something that almost resembled joy. You got in. They want to start the combined protocol next week. Seo Jin sat in her hospital bed, the letter trembling in her hands. I got in. You got in. Fully funded, 6-month treatment program. And Seo Jin? Dr. Chen's voice was gentle. The preliminary studies show an 87% remission rate. 87%. Not a cure, but close enough to feel like a miracle. Dr. Chen, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your nurse. Marcus's recommendation letter was quite something. After Dr. Chen left, Seo Jin stared at the acceptance letter until the words blurred together. She thought about her father in Seoul, probably awake despite the time difference, waiting for news that would determine whether he'd lost everything for something or for nothing. She called him immediately. Appa, I got in. The trial. I got in. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Seo Jin thought the connection had failed. Then she heard her father crying, something she hadn't heard since her grandmother's funeral when she was 12. Appa? I'm here. Seo Jin-ah, I'm here. His voice was thick with tears. When do you start? Next week. They said the treatment is more intensive, but the success rate, 87%. Dr. Chen called me an hour ago. Jung-ho's voice steadied. She also told me about the nurse who recommended you. Seo Jin's cheeks burned. Appa, she said his letter was the most compelling patient advocacy she'd ever read. She said he described you as a woman who has shown the capacity to inspire others to be better than they thought possible. He wrote that? He wrote that. Among other things. There was a pause. Seo Jin-ah, this man, Marcus, he's important to you? The question hung between Seoul and Boston like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Seo Jin had spent months hiding her feelings from her parents, protecting them from the additional worry of their daughter falling in love with a stranger in a foreign country. Yes, she said simply. He's important to me. Then I would like to meet him. Before Seo Jin could respond, her father continued. Your mother and I are flying to Boston next week for the start of your treatment. Appa, you don't have to. We're coming, and we're bringing Halmione's ring. Seo Jin's heart stopped. Her grandmother's ring, a simple gold band with a small pearl, worn by 3 generations of women in her family. The ring her father had promised would be hers when she found someone worth marrying. Appa, I'm not engaged. We haven't even... Hope is a choice, Seo Jin-ah. And sometimes we choose to hope for things that haven't happened yet. After the call ended, Seo Jin sat in the growing darkness of her hospital room, processing the magnitude of what had just shifted in her life. The trial. Her parents coming to America. The ring. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Marcus appeared in the doorway, still in his scrubs from the day shift. Hey, I heard about the trial. Congratulations. Thank you. Dr. Chen told me about your letter. Marcus stepped into the room but didn't approach the bed. It was just the truth. You wrote that I inspire people to be better than they thought possible. You do. How? Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her face in the dim light from the hallway. You want the honest answer? Always. 3 weeks ago, I was a nurse who did his job well but never got too close. Professional distance, clinical detachment. It was safer that way. And now? Now I stay up all night researching experimental treatments for one patient. I spend my days off learning Korean phrases I'll probably never pronounce correctly. I break hospital policies and risk my career because making you smile has become more important than following rules. Seo Jin's heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus, you make me want to be brave. He continued, stepping closer to her bed. The way you fight, the way you hope even when hope seems impossible. It makes me think that maybe I can be brave too. Brave enough for what? Marcus sat down in the chair beside her bed. Their chair. Brave enough to tell you that I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air like a confession and a question all at once. Seo-jin felt tears prick her eyes, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of pain or fear. Even though I'm sick? Because you're strong. Even though I live on the other side of the world? Geography is just geography. Even though we met in the worst possible circumstances? Marcus smiled, especially because of that. Anyone can fall in love when everything is perfect. It takes something special to fall in love when everything is broken. Seo-jin reached out and took his hand. My parents are coming next week for the start of treatment. How do you feel about that? Terrified, excited. My father wants to meet you. Should I be worried? He's bringing my grandmother's ring. Marcus went very still. What does that mean? It means he's hoping for something that hasn't happened yet. And what are you hoping for? Seo-jin looked at this man who had walked into her life at her lowest moment and somehow convinced her that lilac was the color of strength. This man who was willing to risk everything just to give her a chance at living. I'm hoping for you, she whispered. Marcus leaned forward, his free hand coming up to cup her face. Seo-jin, can I? Yes. He kissed her then, soft and careful, and full of all the words they hadn't said yet. It tasted like hope, and felt like coming home to a place she'd never been, but had been searching for her entire life. When they broke apart, Seo-jin pressed her forehead against his. The new treatment starts Monday. I know. It's going to be harder than what we've done so far. More intensive, more side effects. I know. You sure you want to sign up for that? Marcus smiled and kissed her again, deeper this time. I already signed up, the day I found you on that bathroom floor. But some promises are tested by more than distance and disease. They're tested by family, tradition, and the weight of expectations that cross oceans. James Morrison had perfect timing for disasters. He rounded the corner just as Marcus and Seo-jin broke apart from their kiss, catching them in a moment so intimate that he actually took a step backward. But it was too late. Seo-jin had seen him, her cheeks flaming red with embarrassment. Oh, shit. Sorry, James gestured vaguely at the hallway behind him. I was just... Dr. Chen wanted to... I should go. James, wait. Marcus stood up, his hand still holding Seo-jin's. It's okay. Is it? James looked between them, his expression unreadable. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just crossed a line you can't uncross. Seo-jin felt the weight of being the center of a conversation she only half understood. I'm sorry. Should I? No, Marcus said firmly. James, this is Seo-jin. Seo-jin, this is James, my best friend and the hospital's physical therapist. James stepped into the room, and Seo-jin could see him taking in every detail, her hand in Marcus's, the way Marcus's body angled protectively toward her, the undeniable intimacy that filled the space between them. So, you're the one who's got him learning Korean and breaking hospital policies. James, I'm not judging, James said quickly. I'm just processing. 6 years I've known this guy, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Seo-jin felt heat rise in her cheeks again. Is that good or bad? James studied her for a moment, and Seo-jin had the distinct feeling she was being evaluated. That depends. You planning on breaking his heart? I'm planning on getting better. That's not what I asked. Marcus tensed. James, that's enough. No, it's okay. Seo-jin looked directly at James, her voice steady despite her nerves. You want to know if I'm going to hurt him. The answer is that I hope not. But I can't promise not to die. And I can't promise that love is enough to bridge 2 continents and 2 very different lives. All I can promise is that I'll fight as hard for him as he's fighting for me." James was quiet for a long moment. Then his expression softened. "You know what? That's probably the most honest answer anyone's ever given me. James came by to tell me something," Marcus said, his voice careful. "Didn't you?" James glanced at Seo Jin, then back at Marcus. "It can wait." "No, it can't. I can see it in your face." Marcus squeezed Seo Jin's hand. "Whatever it is, just say it." James took a deep breath. "Dr. Chen wants to see you, both of you. There's been a complication with the trial." The words hit the room like ice water. Seo Jin felt Marcus's hand tighten around hers. "What kind of complication?" Marcus asked. "The funding got pulled. Political bullshit about experimental treatments on foreign nationals. They're only accepting American citizens now." Seo Jin's world tilted. "What does that mean?" "It means you're out," James said gently. "I'm sorry." The silence that followed was deafening. Seo Jin stared at the acceptance letter on her bedside table, the piece of paper that had represented hope, a future, the chance to live without bankrupting her family. "There has to be something," Marcus started. "There's not," James interrupted. "I already asked. Dr. Chen spent 3 hours on the phone trying to find alternatives. The decision's final." Seo Jin let go of Marcus's hand and pulled her knees up to her chest, suddenly feeling very small and very far from home. "How long?" "How long what?" "How long do I have with the regular treatment before the money runs out?" Marcus and James exchanged a look that told her they'd already had this conversation. 6 weeks, Marcus said quietly. "Maybe 8. 6 weeks. 6 weeks to somehow get better enough to survive the trip home to Seoul, where she'd die in a public hospital bed while her parents sold everything they owned to pay for treatment that couldn't save her." "Hey." Marcus sat back down on the edge of her bed. "Look at me." Seo Jin raised her eyes to his. "This isn't over. We'll find another way." "There is no other way. There's always another way." Marcus's voice was fierce. "I didn't fall in love with you just to watch you give up. You fell in love with me?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I thought that was obvious. Despite everything, the crushing disappointment, the fear, the impossible situation, Seo Jin felt her heart lift. "I fell in love with you too." James cleared his throat. "Okay, this is beautiful and all, but you might want to save the romantic declarations until after you talk to Dr. Chen, because there's something else." "What else?" Marcus asked. "She said to tell you that sometimes the best medicine comes from the most unexpected places." James looked directly at Seo Jin. "She wants to see both of you in her office, now." As they made their way down the hallway, Seo Jin in a wheelchair, Marcus pushing, James walking alongside, Seo Jin couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again. Dr. Chen's cryptic message echoed in her mind. Sometimes the best medicine comes from the most unexpected places. "Marcus," she said as they approached Dr. Chen's office. "Yeah? Whatever happens in there, whatever Dr. Chen tells us, I want you to know that these past few weeks have been the best of my life." Marcus stopped pushing the wheelchair and knelt down beside her. "They're not going to be the last few weeks of your life. I won't let them be. You can't promise that. Watch me. But some promises require more than determination. They require miracles, and miracles have a way of coming with a price that no one expects to pay." Dr. Helen Chen's office had never felt smaller. Seo Jin sat in her wheelchair between Marcus and James, all three of them facing the woman who held her future in her hands. Dr. Chen looked tired, more tired than Seo Jin had ever seen her. But there was something else in her expression. Something that looked almost like excitement? "I have news," Dr. Chen said without preamble. "And it's complicated." "Good complicated or bad complicated?" Marcus asked. "Both." Dr. Chen pulled up something on her computer screen. "The immunotherapy trial that rejected you? They just had a dropout. American patient, stage 4 ovarian cancer. She decided to pursue palliative care instead." Seo Jin's heart jumped. "Does that mean—" "It means there's an opening. One spot." Dr. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "But there's a catch." "There's always a catch," James muttered. "The spot has to be filled by an American citizen or permanent resident. No exceptions this time. The funding requirements are non-negotiable." The hope that had flared in Seo Jin's chest died as quickly as it had been born. "So I still can't—" "Not as Min Seo Jin of Seoul, South Korea." "No." "Dr. Chen," Marcus said carefully, "what exactly are you suggesting?" Dr. Chen leaned forward. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply providing information about immigration law and medical treatment eligibility." The room fell silent. Seo Jin looked between the three Americans, feeling like she was missing something crucial. "I don't understand," she said finally. James was the one who answered, his voice very quiet. "She's talking about marriage, Seo Jin. If you marry an American citizen, you become eligible for the trial." The words hit the room like a bomb. Seo Jin stared at Marcus, who had gone very still. "Marriage? It's not—" Marcus started, then stopped. "I mean, it's not that simple." "Actually, it is that simple," Dr. Chen said. "Medically speaking, marriage to a U.S. citizen grants immediate eligibility for federally funded medical trials. The paperwork takes about 48 hours. But the trial starts Monday," Seo Jin pointed out, "which gives us the weekend." Dr. Chen looked directly at Marcus. "If, hypothetically, someone were considering this option—" Marcus was staring at his hands. Seo Jin could practically see him calculating the risk, the complications, the implications of marrying someone he'd known for 3 weeks under circumstances that made clear thinking nearly impossible. "Marcus," she said softly, "look at me." He raised his eyes to hers, and she saw everything there: love, fear, determination, and something that looked like panic. "You don't have to do this," she said. "This is not your responsibility." "Isn't it?" "No, it's not. You've already done more for me than I ever had a right to ask for." "You didn't ask," Marcus said quietly. "I offered. Marriage is different than offering to hold someone's hand during chemo." "Is it?" Marcus leaned forward. "Seo Jin, what do you think marriage is?" "It's promising to hold someone's hand through everything. Sickness, health, chemotherapy, remission, good days, bad days, all of it. You've known me for 3 weeks. I've known you long enough to know that I don't want to live in a world where you're not in it." Seo Jin felt tears prick her eyes. "That's not a good enough reason to get married." "Why not?" "Because—" She struggled to find words that made sense. "Because you deserve better than a marriage that started as a medical necessity." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "Seo Jin, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "My parents got married because my mom got pregnant with me. Shotgun wedding, family pressure, All of it. They were 19 years old and had no business being married to anyone, much less each other. What happened? They've been married 34 years, still hold hands during movies, still laugh at each other's terrible jokes. Marcus smiled. The reason you get married doesn't matter as much as what you do with the marriage once you have it. But this is different. Is it? I love you. You love me. Everything else is just paperwork. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. I'm going to step out and give you some privacy to discuss this. But I need an answer by tomorrow morning. The trial starts Monday, and if we're going to make this work, we need to move fast. After she left, the three of them sat in silence. Finally, James spoke. For what it's worth, I think you're both crazy. But I also think you're crazy about each other, which might be the same thing. James, Marcus started. I'm not done. James looked at Seo Jin. He's going to ask you to marry him. And you're going to say yes because you love him, and because you want to live. But I need you to understand something. If you break his heart after this, I will personally fly to Seoul and make your life miserable. Despite everything, Seo Jin almost smiled. Understood. Good. James stood up. Marcus, can I talk to you? Privately. Marcus looked at Seo Jin. Will you be okay for a few minutes? I'll be fine. After the men left, Seo Jin sat alone in Dr. Chen's office, staring at the medical diplomas on the wall. Marriage, to a man she'd known for 3 weeks, in a country that wasn't her home, to access medical treatment she couldn't otherwise afford. It sounded like the plot of a bad romantic comedy, except for the part where she was genuinely, completely, terrifyingly in love with him. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. How are you feeling today, Seo Jinna? She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Like I'm about to make either the best decision or the worst mistake of my life. Those are often the same thing, came his immediate reply. Follow your heart. Seo Jin closed her eyes and tried to imagine her life in 6 weeks if she said no. Back in Seoul, dying slowly in a public hospital while her parents sold everything they owned. She tried to imagine never seeing Marcus again, never hearing his terrible Korean pronunciation, never feeling his gentle hands on her face. Then she tried to imagine saying yes. Marriage to a man she loved but barely knew. A life in America, far from her family. The possibility of health, of a future, of love. When Marcus and James returned, Marcus's face was pale but determined. Seo Jin, he said, dropping to one knee beside her wheelchair. I know this is crazy. I know we haven't known each other long enough, and I know the circumstances are impossible. But I also know that I love you, and I know that I want to spend whatever time we have, whether it's 6 weeks or 60 years, fighting for each other. He pulled something from his pocket, a simple silver ring with a small diamond. Will you marry me? Seo Jin looked at the ring, then at Marcus's face, then at James, who was trying very hard to look anywhere else. Where did you get that ring? Marcus's cheeks reddened. Hospital gift shop. It was the only place open at midnight. You bought me an engagement ring from a hospital gift shop? I bought you a ring that means I want to be with you in sickness and in health, for better or worse, for as long as we both shall live. The gift shop part is just logistics. Seo Jin started laughing, real, genuine laughter that felt like medicine in her chest. Oh my God, we're insane. Completely, Marcus agreed. Is that a yes? That's a yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Nothing about their relationship had followed normal rules. Why should their engagement be any different? There's one more thing, Marcus said, his voice suddenly uncertain. What? Your parents. They're flying in next week to meet me and watch you start treatment. Oh God. Seo-jin had completely forgotten. They're going to think we've lost our minds. Have we? She looked at this man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. This man who was willing to marry her to save her life, who learned Korean phrases just to make her smile, who saw strength in her favorite color. Probably, she said. But I don't care. Marcus leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Mrs. Williams, he said softly. I like the sound of that. Me too. But some weddings are planned in hospital corridors, and some promises are made under fluorescent lights. And sometimes those are the most real promises of all. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday morning in the hospital chapel, with Dr. Chen as witness and James as reluctant best man. Seo-jin had exactly 36 hours to mentally prepare for becoming a married woman, and she was failing spectacularly. You're hyperventilating, Marcus observed from his chair beside her bed. It was Friday night, and he was technically off duty, but leaving her alone the night before their wedding felt impossible. I'm not hyperventilating. I'm breathing rapidly due to anxiety. That's literally the definition of hyperventilating. Seo-jin glared at him. Don't be medical at me right now. Marcus smiled and took her hand, running his thumb over the hospital gift shop engagement ring. What are you worried about? Everything. Your supervisor is going to fire you. My parents are going to disown me. We don't have rings for the actual ceremony. I don't have a dress. We haven't discussed where we're going to live or how we're going to handle our completely different cultures or what happens if the treatment doesn't work. Breathe. Or what happens if it does work and I get better and we realize we only fell in love because of extreme circumstances and medical trauma. Seo-jin, breathe. She took a shaky breath, then another. Better? Better. Marcus squeezed her hand. Now, let's address your concerns one at a time. First, my supervisor. She's going to fire you. Probably. But Dr. Chen has already offered me a position in her private practice. Better hours, better pay, and a boss who thinks love is medicine. Really? Really? Second, your parents. They're going to think I've lost my mind. Maybe. But your father is bringing your grandmother's ring, which suggests he's at least open to the possibility of you getting married, even if the timeline is a little accelerated. Seo-jin considered this. Okay. Third concern. We don't have wedding rings. Marcus grinned and pulled a small box from his pocket. Wrong. Where did you... James went to an actual jewelry store. Apparently he was offended by the idea of me getting married with a hospital gift shop ring. Marcus opened the box to reveal 2 simple gold bands. They're nothing fancy, but they're real. Seo-jin felt tears prick her eyes. They're perfect. Fourth concern. You don't have a dress. I can't exactly go dress shopping from a hospital bed. You can if your future mother-in-law goes for you. Marcus's smile was soft. I called my mom, told her the whole story. She's driving up from Hartford tomorrow morning with 3 dresses in different sizes and a very strong opinion about hospital weddings. Your mother is coming to our wedding? My mother is coming to meet the woman who convinced her son to risk everything for love. She's terrified and excited and already planning to redecorate our guest room for when your parents visit. Our guest room? Which brings me to concern number 5, where we're going to live. My apartment is small, but it's close to the hospital. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Seo-jin stared at him. You've thought of everything. I've thought of the immediate problems. The long-term stuff we'll figure out together. Marcus brought her hand to his lips. That's what married people do. Before Seo-jin could respond, there was a sharp knock on her door. Supervisor Rodriguez stepped into the room, her expression thunderous. "Williams, I need to see you. Now." Marcus squeezed Seo-jin's hand once, then stood. "I'll be right back." "Take your time," Rodriguez said coldly. "Because after we talk, you won't be coming back." The door closed behind them with a decisive click, leaving Seo-jin alone with her racing heart and the sound of raised voices in the hallway. She couldn't make out specific words, but the tone was unmistakable. Marcus was being fired. 20 minutes later, he returned, his face calm but his eyes stormy. "How bad?" Seo-jin asked. "I'm officially terminated as of tonight. Violation of professional ethics, inappropriate relationship with a patient, failure to maintain clinical boundaries." Marcus sat down heavily. "The whole thing? I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. This was my choice." He met her eyes. "And I'd make it again. But your career will be fine. Dr. Chen wasn't kidding about the job offer. I start Monday." Marcus smiled wryly. "Same day as your treatment, actually. We'll be working together." "Is that allowed? When you're married to the patient?" "Apparently, yes. As long as there's full disclosure, and another physician maintains primary oversight." Seo-jin shook her head. "This is all so complicated. The best things usually are." Marcus squeezed her hand, and for a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, processing the weight of what had just happened. His job was gone, but somehow it felt like a door closing so another could open. Another knock interrupted their quiet moment, but this time it was gentler. Dr. Chen peered around the door with a knowing smile. "May I come in? I have someone I'd like you both to meet." "Of course." Dr. Chen stepped aside, and a woman appeared in the doorway, middle-aged, with Marcus's dark eyes and a no-nonsense expression that somehow managed to be warm at the same time. She carried several garment bags and moved with the confidence of someone on a mission. Marcus's face transformed with surprise and affection. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "What do you think I'm doing here?" Dorothy Williams stepped into the room, her gaze immediately focusing on Seo-jin. "My son calls me at midnight to tell me he's getting married tomorrow to save the life of the woman he loves. Did you really think I wouldn't come?" "Seo-jin," Marcus said, his voice soft with emotion. "This is my mother, Dorothy Williams." "Mom, this is Seo-jin." Dorothy Williams stepped forward, her eyes taking in everything. The IV lines, the hospital bed, the engagement ring, her son's protective stance beside the woman he'd decided to marry in less than 48 hours. "Hello, sweetheart." Dorothy's voice was gentle. "I brought you some options for tomorrow." She held up the 3 garment bags. "I wasn't sure about measurements, so I covered all the bases. Simple, elegant, appropriate for both a wedding and a hospital setting. Mrs. Williams, you didn't have to." "Dorothy?" "And yes, I did." She set the garment bags on the visitor's chair. "My son calls me at midnight to tell me he's getting married to save the life of the woman he loves. The least I can do is make sure she has something beautiful to wear." Seo-jin felt tears threaten. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see if any of them fit." Dorothy smiled. "Dr. Chen, would you mind helping her try these on? I need to have a word with my son." After the women left for the bathroom, Marcus found himself alone with Dr. Chen, who was studying him with that intense expression he'd learned to recognize. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "About the marriage or the job?" Either. Both. Marcus considered the question seriously. No second thoughts. Good, because I have something to tell you, and it's going to test your resolve. Marcus's stomach dropped. What now? I got a call from Seoul. Seo Jin's parents land at Logan tomorrow at 6 a.m. They've moved up their flight. They'll be here for the wedding. They don't know about the wedding. As far as they know, they're coming to meet their daughter's American nurse and witness the start of her treatment. Marcus rubbed his face. Oh, hell. It gets better. Her father specifically asked if you were serious about his daughter. Apparently, Seo Jin's been less than forthcoming about the nature of your relationship. So we get to surprise them with a marriage they didn't know was happening to a man they've never met. That's about the size of it. Any advice? Dr. Chen smiled. Learn to say, I love your daughter in Korean, and fast. But some surprises are harder to explain than others, especially when they involve immigration laws, experimental treatments, and parents who've traveled halfway around the world expecting answers. The Min Young-ho stepped off the plane at Logan International Airport looking like a man prepared for war. Seo Jin's mother, Soon-mi, walked beside him with the careful composure of a woman who had spent 30 years married to a force of nature. Both carried the exhaustion of a 14-hour flight and the weight of seeing their only child for the first time in 8 months. Marcus waited in the arrivals area, holding a sign with their names in both English and Korean, courtesy of Google Translate and 3 hours of practice. He'd asked Seo Jin to come with him, but she'd refused, insisting that meeting her parents should happen on neutral ground, not in a hospital corridor where she looked fragile and dependent. They need to see you as the man I chose, she'd said, not as the nurse who's taking care of me. Now, watching Young-ho scan the crowd with sharp, assessing eyes, Marcus wondered if there was actually a difference. Mr. and Mrs. Min? Marcus approached them with what he hoped was a confident smile. I'm Marcus Williams. Young-ho's handshake was firm to the point of being a test. Soon-mi bowed slightly, her eyes taking in Marcus's height, his bearing, the careful way he pronounced their names. Thank you for meeting us, Soon-mi said in careful English. Seo Jin speaks of you often. Not often enough, apparently. Young-ho's English was more fluent than his wife's, colored with the crisp precision of a businessman who'd spent decades in international markets. She failed to mention you were quite so involved in her care. The drive to the hospital was tense, filled with polite questions that felt like interrogations. Marcus found himself explaining his background, his education, his intentions. Everything except the one thing he most needed to tell them. You are unmarried? Young-ho asked as they pulled into the hospital parking garage. Currently, yes. Children? No. Family? My mother, she's here, at the hospital. Young-ho's eyebrows rose. Your mother is here? There's something I need to tell you both. Before we see Seo Jin. Marcus parked the car and turned to face them, his heart hammering against his ribs. Seo Jin and we're getting married. Tomorrow. The silence in the car was deafening. Married, Soon-mi repeated slowly, as if the word were foreign. Tomorrow, Young-ho added, his voice dangerously quiet. I know how this must sound. Do you? Young-ho's calm was more frightening than shouting would have been. Do you know how it sounds for a stranger to tell me that my daughter is marrying someone I met 5 minutes ago? Mr. Min, if you'll let me explain... Explain what? How you convinced a sick, frightened girl to marry you? How you took advantage of her vulnerability? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Marcus took a deep breath. It's like falling in love with someone who makes you want to be braver than you are. It's like watching someone fight for their life and deciding that you want to fight beside them. It's like realizing that love isn't about timing or circumstances. It's about choosing someone and choosing them every day, even when everything is complicated and scary and impossible. Kyungrae was quiet for a long moment. And the marriage tomorrow? That is also about love? Marcus met his eyes. The marriage is about keeping her alive so we have the chance to see what our love becomes. Explain. So Marcus did. He explained about the trial, the citizenship requirements, the funding that had been pulled and restored. He explained about the 87% success rate and the 6 weeks of money left, and the impossible choice between love and survival that had turned out to not be a choice at all. When he finished, Sunmi was crying silently. Kyungrae stared out the windshield at the gray concrete of the parking garage. You are willing to marry my daughter to save her life. I'm willing to marry your daughter because I love her. The fact that it saves her life is just a bonus. And if the treatment doesn't work, Marcus's throat tightened, then I'll love her for whatever time we have. And if it does work, if she recovers completely, then I'll love her for the rest of our lives. Kyungrae turned to look at Marcus directly. You understand that you are asking me to give my daughter to a man I do not know, in a country that is not her home, for a marriage that began as medical necessity. Yes, sir. You understand that if you hurt her, I will destroy you. I understand. Good. Kyungrae opened the car door. Let us go meet this woman who has captured both my daughter's heart and yours. The elevator ride to the oncology ward was silent. Sunmi clutched a small wrapped box that Marcus assumed contained the grandmother's ring Seo-jin had mentioned. Kyungrae stood with the rigid posture of a man preparing for battle. At the door to room 314, Marcus paused. Before we go in, there's one more thing. What now? Kyungrae asked. She doesn't know you're here yet. We wanted to surprise her. We? Your daughter and I. We thought... The door opened before Marcus could finish. Seo-jin appeared in the doorway, no longer in her hospital gown, but wearing jeans and a soft lavender sweater. She looked healthier than Marcus had seen her in weeks, color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. Yama? Appa? The Korean words came out as a whisper. Sunmi's composure crumbled. She rushed forward, wrapping her daughter in her arms and speaking rapidly in Korean through her tears. Kyungrae approached more slowly, his stern expression softening as he took in his daughter's appearance. You look stronger, he said in English, glancing at Marcus. I am stronger. Seo-jin's voice was steady. Appa, Iyama, we need to talk. They moved into the hospital room, where Dorothy Williams was waiting with the 3 wedding dresses laid out on the bed. The sight of formal wear in a medical setting created a surreal juxtaposition that somehow perfectly captured the impossible nature of their situation. Mrs. Min, Mr. Min, Dorothy stood and bowed slightly. I'm Dorothy Williams, Marcus's mother. I'm honored to meet you. Kyungrae studied the dresses, his sharp mind clearly calculating the significance of their presence. There is to be a wedding. Tomorrow morning, Seo-jin confirmed. Appa, I know this seems sudden. Sudden? Kyungrae's laugh was harsh. Sudden is rain without clouds. This is something else entirely. This is love, Seo-jin said simply, and hope, and the chance for me to live. By marrying a stranger. By marrying the man who saw strength in me when everyone else saw only sickness. The man who learned Korean phrases just to make me smile. The man who broke hospital rules and risked his career because he believed I was worth fighting for. Sunmi looked between her daughter and Marcus. You love him? I love him, Iyama. And you? Kyungrae addressed Marcus directly. You love my daughter? More than I knew it was possible to love someone. Enough to marry her? Enough to marry her, fight for her, build a life with her, and grow old beside her if we're lucky enough to get the chance. Kyung-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled the small wrapped box from his pocket. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said to Seo-jin in Korean, then switched to English for Marcus's benefit. "She wore it for 63 years of marriage. It has seen love in wartime, poverty, immigration, illness, and joy. If you are truly choosing this man, if you believe he will honor what this ring represents, then it is yours." Seo-jin opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a simple gold band set with a small pearl, worn smooth by decades of wear. "Halmayoni's ring," she whispered. "The pearl was added when she gave birth to your father," Sunmi explained. "She said it represented the treasure that comes from pressure and time." Marcus stared at the ring, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered. This wasn't just family jewelry, it was history, tradition, the weight of generations. "I can't," he started. "You can," Kyung-ho interrupted. "If you promise to understand what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means that love is not about perfect circumstances. It means that the strongest bonds are forged under pressure. It means that some treasures are worth any risk." Marcus took the ring from the box, his hand steady despite the enormity of the moment. "I promise to understand." "Then tomorrow," Kyung-ho said, "you may place it on my daughter's finger." But some promises are witnessed by families, and some rings carry the weight of generations, and sometimes that's exactly the kind of pressure that creates something beautiful. Saturday morning dawned gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that in any other circumstances would have felt like an omen. But as Seo-jin stood in front of the bathroom mirror in the hospital's family suite, adjusting the simple white dress Dorothy had brought, she felt only anticipation. The dress fit perfectly, knee-length, long sleeves, elegant without being overdone. It was exactly what she would have chosen if she'd had months to plan instead of hours. "You look beautiful." Sunmi appeared behind her in the mirror, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Like a bride should look. Even in a hospital?" "Especially in a hospital. Because this is where your love story began." Seo-jin turned to face her mother. "Are you disappointed? That it's not the wedding we planned when I was little?" Sunmi reached up to touch her daughter's face. "When you were little, I planned for you to marry a nice Korean boy from a good family. Someone safe, predictable, appropriate. And instead, I'm marrying an American nurse I met while dying of cancer. Instead, you're marrying the man who helped you choose to live." Sunmi smiled. "I think I prefer your choice to mine." A soft knock interrupted them. "Ready?" Dorothy called through the door. "Almost." Seo-jin took one last look in the mirror, then opened the door to find Dorothy, her father, and Dr. Chen waiting in the small suite. "The chapel is ready," Dr. Chen announced. "Marcus is already there with James. He looks terrified." "Good terrified or bad terrified?" Seo-jin asked. "Terrified of how much he loves you terrified. The best kind." Kyung-ho stepped forward, offering his arm. "Shall we?" The walk to the hospital chapel felt both endless and far too short. Seo-jin's legs were steadier than they'd been in months, her energy higher than it had any right to be. She wondered if this was what hope felt like when it became action, instead of just wish. The chapel was small, non-denominational, designed to provide comfort for families of all faiths. Someone, probably Dorothy, had brought lilac flowers. They sat in simple arrangements on the altar and along the short aisle, transforming the sterile space into something that actually felt sacred. Marcus stood at the front with James beside him, both men wearing dark suits that looked suspiciously new. When he saw Seo-jin in the doorway, his face transformed. The nervousness disappeared, replaced by something that looked like wonder. "Damn," James muttered under his breath. "She's beautiful." "I know," Marcus said softly, never taking his eyes off her. The ceremony itself was brief, presided over by a hospital chaplain who had performed more bedside weddings than formal ones. But there was nothing perfunctory about the vows they spoke to each other. "Seo-jin," Marcus said when prompted, "I promise to love you in sickness and in health, in poverty and in wealth, in fear and in hope. I promise to learn your language and understand your heart. I promise to fight for you, fight with you, and never let you fight alone." "Marcus," Seo-jin replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "I promise to love you in strength and in weakness, in certainty and in doubt, in healing and in struggle. I promise to teach you my language and learn yours. I promise to choose courage over fear, hope over despair, and you over everyone else, for as long as we both shall live." When the chaplain pronounced them married, Marcus kissed her with the gentleness of a man who understood exactly how precious the moment was. The small gathering erupted in applause, Dorothy crying openly, Young-ho wiping his eyes, Sunmi beaming with joy. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chaplain announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Williams." "Mrs. Williams." Seo-jin tested the name silently, surprised by how natural it felt. The reception was cake and coffee in Dr. Chen's office, with toasts made in both English and Korean. Young-ho presented Marcus with a small gift, a Korean-English dictionary with a note tucked inside. "What does it say?" Marcus asked, showing Seo-jin the Korean writing. "Welcome to the family," she translated, then looked more closely. "Also, learn faster. My daughter deserves better pronunciation." Everyone laughed, the tension of the morning finally breaking into something that felt like celebration. But as the afternoon wore on, reality began to reassert itself. Monday morning was less than 36 hours away. The experimental treatment would begin, with all its promise and uncertainty. The honeymoon would be spent in a hospital room, with IV poles instead of room service. "Second thoughts?" Marcus asked, as they finally found themselves alone in what was now their shared hospital room. "About which part?" "Any of it. All of it." Seo-jin looked at her new husband, sitting beside her hospital bed in his wedding suit, still wearing his boutonniere. "Do you know what I was thinking about during the ceremony?" "What?" "That 3 months ago I was planning my own funeral. I was choosing music and writing letters to people I'd never see again. I was getting ready to die." Marcus took her hand, his thumb running over her grandmother's pearl ring. "And now I'm married to someone who makes me want to live for the next 60 years, just to see what happens next. What if the treatment doesn't work? Then we'll have had this perfect, impossible, beautiful day when we chose each other in front of everyone we love." Seo-jin leaned forward and kissed him softly. "That's more than I ever thought I'd have. And if it does work, then we'll have the rest of our lives to figure out how to love each other in all the ordinary ways. The ways that don't involve hospitals and experimental treatments and immigration paperwork." Marcus smiled. "I like the sound of ordinary." "Me too." That night, Seo-jin lay in her hospital bed with Marcus sleeping in the chair beside her. His chair, the same one where he'd learned Korean phrases and brought lilac flowers and asked about her favorite color. Sunmi and Young-ho were at a nearby hotel, exhausted from travel and emotion. Dorothy had driven back to Hartford with promises to return for the treatment updates. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. the experimental immunotherapy that could cure her or kill her, the treatment that was only possible because she was now Mrs. Marcus Williams instead of Min Seo-jin. But tonight, she was simply a newly married woman wearing her grandmother's ring and watching her husband sleep. Tonight, she was alive and in love and filled with more hope than she'd thought her body could contain. Outside, the Boston rain continued to fall, washing the city clean for whatever came next. But some new beginnings start with experimental medicine and uncertain outcomes. And sometimes that's exactly the kind of beginning worth fighting for. 3 months later, Seo-jin sat in the same waiting room where she'd once counted ceiling tiles and prepared to die. Now she counted her blessings instead. Marcus's hand in hers, her parents via video call on her phone, Dr. Chen's confident smile as she approached with a manila folder that contained either the best news of their lives or the worst. "How are we feeling?" Dr. Chen asked, settling into the chair across from them. "Terrified," Seo-jin admitted. But together. The experimental treatment had been brutal. 3 months of immunotherapy combined with targeted chemotherapy, each session pushing her body to its absolute limits. There had been days when she couldn't keep food down, nights when Marcus held her while she shook with fever, moments when they both wondered if the cure might kill her before the cancer could. But there had also been good days. Days when her energy returned, when her color improved, when the blood tests showed steady improvement. Days when she could walk around the hospital without a wheelchair, when she could eat her mother's songpyeon that Sunmi had learned to make in Marcus's tiny Boston kitchen. The scans came back, Dr. Chen said without preamble. All of them. Seo-jin's heart hammered against her ribs. And Dr. Chen opened the folder and pulled out the first scan. This was 3 months ago. You can see the tumor here and the lymph node involvement here. Seo-jin stared at the grainy images of her own body, remembering the fear that had consumed her when she first saw those dark spots. "And this," Dr. Chen said, pulling out a second scan, "is from last week." The new scan looked completely different. Clean, empty of the shadows that had been slowly killing her. "I don't see," Seo-jin started, then stopped. "Dr. Chen, I don't see anything." "That's because there's nothing to see. No tumors, no lymph node involvement. No signs of active disease anywhere in your body." The words hung in the air like music. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, his voice carefully controlled. "It means she's in complete remission. Not just responding to treatment, cured. The cancer is gone." Seo-jin stared at the scan, trying to process information that seemed too good to be true. "Gone? Gone. You'll need regular monitoring for the next 5 years, but Seo-jin, you're cancer-free." The phone in her lap erupted in excited Korean as her parents, who had been listening to the conversation from Seoul, began crying and laughing and talking over each other. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and she could feel him shaking with relief and joy. "Are you sure?" she whispered against his shoulder. "I'm sure," Dr. Chen said, her professional composure finally cracking into a genuine smile. "You beat it, Seo-jin. You won." Later, after the celebration calls and the detailed discussion about follow-up care and the paperwork that would transition her from patient to survivor, Seo-jin and Marcus found themselves alone on the hospital rooftop where they'd spent so many evenings during her treatment. "How does it feel?" Marcus asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they looked out over the Boston skyline. "Surreal. Like I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "Oh, good surreal or bad surreal?" Seo-jin leaned back against his chest. "Good surreal. Definitely good surreal." She paused. "Marcus." "Yeah? What do we do now?" What do you mean? I mean, our entire relationship has been built around me being sick. We got married so I could access treatment. We've spent 3 months fighting cancer together. But now I'm not sick anymore. Now I'm just a woman married to a man she's known for 6 months. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Are you worried we won't know how to love each other when you're healthy? Maybe. A little. Marcus turned her in his arms, so she was facing him. Seo-jin, do you know what I was thinking about while Dr. Chen was showing us those scans? What? I was thinking about teaching you to drive in Boston traffic. About showing you snow for Christmas. Real snow. Not the pitiful stuff you get in Seoul. About you meeting my grandmother in Hartford and charming her the way you charmed my mother. Your grandmother? She's 93 and terrifying, and she's going to love you. Marcus smiled. I was thinking about ordinary things. Boring married couple things. Fighting about whose turn it is to do laundry and learning to cook Korean food and figuring out how to fit 2 people's stuff in my ridiculously small apartment. Seo-jin felt her eyes fill with tears. You want boring? I want boring. I want ordinary. I want a lifetime of completely mundane problems that have nothing to do with hospitals or scans or experimental treatments. What if boring isn't enough? What if we don't know how to be together when everything isn't life or death? Marcus cupped her face in his hands. Then we'll figure it out together, the same way we figured out everything else. Together? Together. Besides, Marcus grinned, I still haven't mastered Korean pronunciation. That should give us at least a year of material to work with. Seo-jin laughed through her tears. Your Korean is terrible. See? Boring married couple problems. Marcus kissed her softly. I love you, Mrs. Williams. Sick, healthy, boring, exciting. I love all of it. I love you too, Mr. Williams. Even your terrible Korean. As they stood on the rooftop watching the sun set over Boston, Seo-jin felt something she'd almost forgotten. The simple, extraordinary gift of an uncertain future. 6 months ago, uncertainty had meant death. Now it meant possibility. Endless, beautiful, ordinary possibility. But some victories are measured not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet promise of tomorrow, and tomorrow after that, and all the tomorrows that stretch ahead like gifts waiting to be unwrapped. 6 months later, the emergency room at Massachusetts General Hospital was controlled chaos at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. But Seo-jin moved through it with the calm confidence of someone who belonged there. Her nursing school clinical rotations had prepared her for this. The beeping monitors, the urgent voices, the constant dance between life and death that happened in these sterile halls. Williams, we need you in trauma too. Doctor. Patricia Russo called out, using the name that still made Seo-jin's heart skip a little. Williams. Her married name, her chosen name, her American name. On my way, Seo-jin responded, grabbing supplies from the crash cart. Trauma 2 held a car accident victim, a young woman about her own age, unconscious and fighting for her life. As Seo-jin helped stabilize the patient, she caught sight of the woman's hand. A simple engagement ring, the kind that spoke of love rather than money. Any family? Seo-jin asked the paramedic who'd brought her in. Boyfriend's in the waiting room. Been there for 3 hours. They were supposed to get married next month. Something about the story tugged at Seo-jin's heart. After they'd stabilized the patient and gotten her to surgery, Seo-jin found herself walking to the waiting room during her break. The man sitting in the corner looked exactly like she'd expected. Young, scared, clutching his phone like it might provide answers. His eyes were red with exhaustion and fear. Are you David? Seo-jin asked gently. He looked up. Yes. Is Sarah? Is she going to be okay? Seo-jin sat down beside him. She's in surgery now. The doctors are doing everything they can. We're supposed to get married in 3 weeks. I keep thinking about how I should have told her I loved her more. How I should have said it every day. Did you tell her today? What? Before the accident. Did you tell her you loved her today? David thought for a moment. Yes. When she left for work. I always tell her when she leaves. Then she knows. Seo-jin smiled. Trust me. She knows. 3 hours later, Sarah came through surgery successfully. As Seo-jin helped transfer her to recovery, she made sure the engagement ring stayed on Sarah's finger where it belonged. Hey, Marcus appeared beside her as she updated Sarah's chart. How was your shift? Good. Busy. Seo-jin looked up at her husband, still amazed sometimes by the ordinariness of seeing him at work. No longer her nurse, just her husband who happened to work in the same hospital where they'd fallen in love. Ready to go home? More than ready. The drive through Boston's early morning streets was quiet, both of them unwinding from the intensity of their respective shifts. It had taken some adjustment, learning to love each other in normal circumstances. Learning that Marcus forgot to put dishes in the dishwasher, and that Seo-jin hoarded art supplies in every available drawer. Learning that they both talked in their sleep, and that Marcus made terrible coffee but excellent pancakes. How's the application coming? Marcus asked as they pulled into their apartment complex. Seo-jin had been working on her application for permanent residency, no longer dependent on their marriage for her legal status, but choosing to make America her home. Almost finished. I should hear back in a few months. And if they approve it, then I'm officially American, officially Mrs. Williams in every possible way. And if they don't? Seo-jin smiled. Then I'm still Mrs. Williams, just with more paperwork. Their apartment was small, but theirs, filled with wedding photos and Korean cooking supplies, and Marcus's terrible attempts at learning to use chopsticks properly. On the kitchen counter sat a small potted plant, a lilac bush they'd been nurturing since spring, waiting for it to bloom. Any day now, Marcus said, following her gaze to the plant. Think it will actually flower? I know it will. Lilacs are stronger than they look. Seo-jin laughed. Is this going to become your thing? Lilac metaphors for everything? Maybe. You married me knowing I was corny. I married you knowing you were brave. Same thing, sometimes. That afternoon, while Marcus slept off his night shift, Seo-jin video called her parents in Seoul. The time difference meant it was evening there, and she could see her mother preparing dinner in the background. How is married life? Sunmi asked, the same question she'd been asking for months. Good. Normal. We had our first real fight last week. About what? Whether to get a cat. Very serious marital discord. Young-ho appeared on the screen, laughing. And who won? We're getting the cat next week. Marcus is a pushover. Good. A house needs animals to make it a home. Appa, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it? Selling the company, spending everything on my treatment? Young-ho was quiet for a moment. Seo-jin, do you see that ring on your finger? Seo-jin looked down at her grandmother's pearl ring, which she wore beside her wedding band. Every day I see that ring. I remember what your Halmione told me when she gave it to me. She said, the pearl is formed when something painful becomes something beautiful. That is the secret to a good life. And you were my painful thing that became beautiful. The company was just money. You are my treasure. After the call ended, Seo-jin sat in their small living room, looking at the life she and Marcus had built together. It wasn't the life she'd planned at 28. It wasn't the life her parents had imagined for her, but it was theirs, chosen and fought for, and earned through the hardest possible circumstances. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Sarah Thompson, your trauma patient from last night, is awake and asking for the nurse with the kind smile. Thought you'd want to know." Seo Jin smiled and typed back, "Tell her I'll stop by tomorrow. And Dr. Chen, thank you for everything. Thank you for choosing to fight," came the immediate reply. Outside their apartment window, Boston hummed with the life of a city that never quite slept. Somewhere in the hospital across town, patients were fighting battles that seemed impossible. Somewhere else, families were getting news that would change everything. And somewhere, two people were probably falling in love under circumstances that made no sense to anyone but them. Seo-jin thought about the young couple in the ER, David and Sarah, whose love story was just beginning in the same place where hers had almost ended. She thought about the ring that had stayed on Sarah's finger through surgery, a symbol of promises yet to be kept. Then she looked at her own hands, at the rings that represented both her past and her future, and felt grateful for every impossible moment that had led her here. But some love stories don't end with grand gestures. They continue with small daily choices to keep loving even when the crisis is over, and all that's left is the beautiful, ordinary work of building a life together. 1 year later, the lilac bush finally bloomed on the anniversary of their first meeting. Seo-jin discovered the purple flowers while watering plants on their apartment balcony, and the sight stopped her short. After months of careful tending, the small bush had finally produced a cluster of delicate blooms that filled the morning air with their sweet fragrance. "Marcus," she called through the open sliding door. "Come see." He appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas and holding a cup of coffee. When he saw the flowers, his face broke into the kind of smile that had first made her believe in hope. "Would you look at that?" he said softly. "Right on schedule. 1 year ago today, you asked me what my favorite color was. And you said lilac. And you said it was the color of strength." Marcus set down his coffee and moved to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I was right, wasn't I?" Seo-jin leaned back against his chest, breathing in the scent of the flowers and the familiar comfort of her husband's embrace. "You were right about a lot of things. The past year had been a masterclass in ordinary love. They'd learned each other's rhythms, fought about mundane things like grocery shopping and whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. Seo-jin had finished nursing school and gotten her permanent residency. Marcus had been promoted to charge nurse in Dr. Chen's expanding practice. They'd hosted her parents for Thanksgiving and his mother for Christmas, navigating the beautiful complications of blended families and cultural differences. "Seo-jin," Marcus said, his voice suddenly different, more serious. I have something for you. It's not my birthday. It's the anniversary of the day we met. That seems worth celebrating." Seo-jin turned in his arms to find him holding a small wrapped box. "Marcus, we agreed no expensive gifts. It's not expensive, it's just necessary." She opened the box to find a simple silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a lilac flower. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely touched. "But why is it necessary?" Marcus took the bracelet from the box and fastened it around her wrist, his fingers gentle against her skin. "Because I need you to have something that reminds you every day that you're stronger than you think you are. Something you can touch when I'm not there to remind you myself. Marcus, I know we're past the dramatic declarations and the life or death moments. I know we've settled into the boring married couple routine we both wanted. But I need you to know that I still think about that bathroom floor where I found you. I still think about how close I came to never knowing you at all." Seo Jin felt tears prick her eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I got a call yesterday. Dr. Patterson at Children's Hospital offered me a position in their pediatric oncology unit. It's a big opportunity, exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do." "That's wonderful. Why don't you sound happy about it?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Because it would mean moving to Philadelphia. And I know how much you love Boston, how much this city means to us. I don't want to ask you to give up the place where we fell in love just because I got a job offer." Seo Jin stared at him, processing this information. Philadelphia, a new city, new jobs, starting over again in a place that didn't hold their history. "What did you tell them?" "That I needed to talk to my wife." "And what does your wife think?" Marcus searched her face. "I don't know." "What does she think?" Seo Jin looked around their small balcony, at the lilac bush they'd nurtured together, at the view of Boston that had been the backdrop to their entire relationship. Then she looked at Marcus, her husband, her partner, the man who had taught her that love was both about big gestures and daily choices. "She thinks," Seo Jin said slowly, "that home isn't a place. It's a person." "Yeah?" "She thinks that Philadelphia probably has hospitals that need good nurses, and Korean restaurants, and places to plant lilac bushes." Marcus's smile started slowly, then spread across his entire face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Besides," Seo Jin grinned, "someone needs to teach those Philadelphia doctors how to pronounce Korean names properly. Might as well be me." Marcus kissed her then, deep and sweet, and full of the kind of promise that had nothing to do with medical emergencies or experimental treatments. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Mrs. Williams." "I love you too, Mr. Williams." In English and in Korean and in whatever language they speak in Philadelphia. I think they speak English in Philadelphia. Good thing I'm fluent. 3 months later, they stood in the empty Boston apartment, surrounded by boxes and the comfortable chaos of a life being packed up and transported. The lilac bush sat in a special container by the door, carefully prepared for the journey to their new home. "Ready?" Marcus asked, picking up the last box. Seo Jin took one final look around the space where they'd learned to be married, where they'd fought their first fights and celebrated their first anniversaries, where she'd become an American citizen, and he'd learned to make decent kimchi. "Ready," she said. As they drove south toward Philadelphia, Seo Jin watched Boston disappear in the rearview mirror. The city had given her so much: a second chance at life, a husband who loved her, the opportunity to become the person she'd always been meant to be. But Boston had also taught her the most important lesson of all, that home wasn't about geography or familiarity, or even shared history. Home was about choosing someone, and choosing them every day, in sickness and in health, in Boston and in Philadelphia, and wherever else life might take them. "Hey, Marcus," she said as they crossed the state line. "Yeah?" "Ask me what my favorite color is." Marcus glanced at her, smiling. "What's your favorite color, Mrs. Williams?" "Lilac. The color of strength, new beginnings, and love that's strong enough to bloom anywhere." "Mine too," he said, just like he had that first day. But this time, he wasn't lying. Because some love stories don't end. They just keep beginning, in new cities and new seasons, with the same two people choosing each other again and again, finding strength in the softest colors and home in each other's hearts. 5 years later, Dr. Seo Jin Williams stood outside the pediatric oncology ward at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, adjusting her white coat and checking her reflection in the glass doors. The Korean characters on her name badge read, "Williams Seo Jin," her chosen combination of old identity and new life, East and West unified in the way she'd learned to live. Inside, 23 young patients were fighting battles that would either make them stronger or take them home to whatever came after this life. Today, she would meet with each of them, offering the kind of hope she'd once desperately needed, and the kind of strength she'd learned was possible, even in the most fragile bodies. "Dr. Williams?" A small voice called from behind her. Seo-jin turned to find 8-year-old Maria Santos, one of her newest patients, holding a crayon drawing. "I made this for you," Maria said shyly. The drawing showed 2 figures, one tall, one small, standing beside a hospital bed. Above them, purple flowers filled the sky like rain. "It's beautiful, Maria. Tell me about it. That's you, and that's me. And those are lilac flowers because you told me they're the strongest flowers even though they look soft." Seo-jin knelt down to Maria's level, remembering another small girl who had once needed someone to explain that gentle things could also be powerful. "Do you know why lilacs are so strong?" Seo-jin asked. "Why?" "Because they bloom even when it's still cold outside. Even when other flowers are too scared to grow, lilacs push through the hard ground and make something beautiful." Maria nodded solemnly. "Like me with the cancer?" "Exactly like you with the cancer." That evening, Seo-jin drove through the Philadelphia suburbs to the house she and Marcus had bought 2 years ago, a small colonial with a front yard perfect for the lilac bushes they'd planted along the fence. The original bush from Boston had not only survived the move but had multiplied, creating a hedge of purple blooms each spring that drew neighbors and honeybees in equal measure. Marcus was already home, sitting on the front porch with his laptop and a cup of coffee, reviewing patient charts for tomorrow's rounds. He looked up when he heard her car in the driveway, and his face transformed with the same smile that had convinced her lilac was the color of strength. "How was your day, doctor?" "Williams? Good. Busy. Maria Santos drew me a picture." "The new admit? How's she doing?" "Fighting hard. Reminds me of someone I used to know." Marcus closed his laptop and stood to meet her on the porch steps. "Yeah? Someone brave and stubborn and too proud to ask for help?" "Something like that." Seo-jin settled beside him on the step, leaning into the comfort of his familiar presence. "Marcus? Do you ever think about that first day? The bathroom floor, the blood, the fact that we almost never met at all?" "Sometimes. Why?" "I was talking to Maria's mother today. About hope, about fighting, about how sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances." Seo-jin was quiet for a moment. "And I realized that if I could go back, if I could change any of it, the cancer, the pain, the fear, I wouldn't." Marcus pulled back to look at her. "You wouldn't?" "I wouldn't change a single thing, because all of it led me to you, to this life, to being the kind of doctor who can help kids like Maria understand that being gentle doesn't mean being weak. Even the dying part, especially the dying part, because that's when I learned that being afraid doesn't disqualify you from being brave. That's when I learned that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about who's willing to help you get back up." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing the pearl ring she still wore beside her wedding band. "I have news," he said finally. "Good news or concerning news. Potentially life-changing news." Seo-jin's heart skipped, the old fear rising automatically before she remembered that not all life changes were bad ones. "Tell me." Marcus pulled an official-looking letter from his pocket. "The adoption agency called. There's a baby. A little girl. Born 3 weeks ago to a teenage mother who specifically requested a family with medical backgrounds." Seo-jin stared at the letter. not quite processing the words. A baby? They want to meet us next week. The birth mother, I mean. To see if we're... Marcus's voice caught. To see if we're the right family for her daughter. They had been trying to adopt for 2 years, navigating the complex process with the same patience and determination they'd brought to everything else in their marriage. But hearing that there was an actual baby, an actual possibility, felt surreal. "What's her name?" Seo Jin asked softly. The birth mother chose Grace Min Williams, if she chooses us. Grace Min Williams. Korean middle name, American first name, their shared surname. A perfect bridge between worlds, just like her parents. "Marcus," Seo Jin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah? What's your favorite color?" Marcus smiled, understanding the question beneath the question. "Lilac, the color of strength, hope, and love that blooms in the most unexpected places." "Mine too." That night, they sat on their porch until well after dark, making lists of all the things they'd need to do if Grace chose them as her parents. Cribs and car seats and pediatricians, and the 1,000 small preparations that went into welcoming a new life. But mostly, they sat in comfortable silence, watching their lilac hedge sway in the evening breeze, and marveling at how far they'd traveled from that first desperate moment on a hospital bathroom floor. "Seo Jin?" Marcus said as they finally prepared to go inside. "Thank you." "For what?" "For falling down in that bathroom, for letting me find you, for saying yes to everything, the marriage, the move, the adoption, all of it. Thank you for asking about my favorite color. Thank you for teaching me that gentle strength is the most powerful kind." As they turned off the porch light and headed inside, Seo Jin caught sight of their reflection in the front window. 2 people who had found each other in the hardest possible circumstances and built something beautiful from the rubble of what might have been. Tomorrow, they would meet a young woman who might trust them with her most precious gift. Tomorrow, they would continue the work of healing children who needed to learn that being small didn't mean being powerless. Tomorrow, they would wake up married to their best friend in a house full of lilac-scented hope. But tonight, they were simply Dr. and Mr. Williams, going to bed in their own home, in love with each other, and the ordinary miracle of still being alive to see what happened next. Because sometimes the strongest people are the ones who learn that gentleness is not weakness, that vulnerability is not defeat, and that the most beautiful flowers grow in the places where the soil is deepest and the light is hardest won. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone will ask you about your favorite color, just when you need to remember that you are stronger than you think, strong enough to bloom anywhere, strong enough to love fearlessly, strong enough to believe that tomorrow will be worth the fight it takes to get there. Lilac, the color of gentle strength and love that endures. If you've fallen in love with Seo Jin and Marcus's journey of finding strength in gentleness, subscribe for more stories about love that heals, hope that transforms, and the beautiful courage it takes to bloom exactly where you are planted.